or the trials and tribulations of boating. Right, just as an introduction, boating is a very strange hobby for me, or it was, because I don't like water and can't swim. However, I had Barney, and I wanted somewhere to take him in the countryside. And I mean, this is a long time ago, obviously, and around 2000 I put an advert at my friend's garage for a field. I'd had a small windfall, well, smallish, and to allow me to buy a small field. And so I put an advert up at my friend's garage, and of all things, 2 years later one came up, but because I haven't been up for a week, I missed it. Now, as it turned out, that was a good thing. And so I'm walking in round the river in Lincoln, round the Witham, and I thought, well, if I get a small boat, I can take him out and he's allowed in the countryside. So that's what started me boating. Anyway, I got a small Norman, 18-foot Norman fiberglass cruiser, and I had that for 18 months. And then I decided to sell it, and I got all my money back in the end through some kind person. And so I started again. I knew what I wanted, and I found a wooden boat, a 20-foot mahogany clinker that was on the south coast, and in fact I'm still friends with the person I bought it off. In fact, he phoned me just this week, you know, so we're still friends. Anyway, I get this boat, and he said it was noisy. Now, it had a YSE-12 Yanmar single-cylinder engine, which I think was made about 1972, but it was made of a very old design, and it was very noisy. And in fact, one of my friends took the mickey because I said I wanted a single-cylinder engine because I liked the noise, but then it was so noisy I had to soundproof it because, seriously, the gearbox had a whine, and I found out through my friend Roy it was in reverse because it had a wrong propeller on. So 2 or 3 propeller changes later, we got the right prop on it of the correct rotation. So we had a bit of fun in the first instance, taking it out and running it on the bank to change it, 1, 2 things like that. Anyway, I used it, right? Now most people, they get a boat and they go out on it, and of course they're used to driving a car. Well, it isn't like a car. It doesn't stop. You have to go in reverse to stop it, and when you steer it, well, I've sort of described it as a bit like flying an aeroplane, but only in, on the flat, not up and down. But we soon got used to it. Anyway, as I say, I used it extensively. Most people don't. I used it ever so much. In fact, one year I did 1,300 miles on it, on my own. Most people did 6 or 60 at the most, and that was the few that dared untie the ropes. So, I mean, I used mine. Anyway, one of my trips was to a barbecue near Leicester, to Thurmaston. It's quite a long trip, and I think I took 4 days to get there. It was quite a long trip. You only do 6 miles an hour, of course, on our inland rivers and waterways. Well, the boat only did 6 miles an hour. Don't have to put a 1,000 horsepower engine on, it'll still do 6 miles an hour. That's what boats do, unless you've got a planing or semi-planing hull. So it's a nice steady job normally. Now, someone once described boating very aptly and that is, it's hours of tranquility interspersed by moments of sheer terror. Well, that comes about because you're driving along absolutely fine, nothing wrong whatsoever, but then the engine stops, and it just happens to stop as you're passing an open weir, and the flow is taking you to this weir, so you're desperately trying to start the engine again before you go over the edge. Thankfully mine never stopped just there. It did have a habit of stopping actually. I could explain it, I won't, because the governor to the engine was actually a shut-off valve, and they had this habit of stopping, and I actually forget what it was caused by. Oh, I know what it's caused by. The fuel was a needle valve that metered the high pressure system, and this needle valve got a flat on it, so every now and then, like every couple of weeks if you're using it, you had to take this needle valve out and turn it 90 degrees, and then it was okay for a while. Anyway, we'll get back to the boating stories. And as I said, I actually came back from Thurmaston, and I got to Nottingham, and it was early morning. I thought, oh, carry on, I'll set off. I was awake, might as well. So I got to Torksey, which is quite a longish trip, got to Newark, and then to Cobblers Lock. And when I got there, it was rattling. And what had happened was, the cutlass bearing, which is the bearing that holds the prop shaft, the screws had come out. Well, knowing boating by now, I carried a brand new small outboard, which powered it perfectly. So I put that on, but I didn't have a full can of petrol. I just had enough to get to Saxelby, and I found the garage was shut. So I chugged a tick over into Lincoln, and I walked to Tesco's, what is it, half a mile or so, with a can, got some petrol for the outboard, and carried on back to Bardney. And we got there in one day. Most people take a week, and I did from Nottingham to Bardney Lock, where I was moored, in one day with a breakdown. That's not bad going, is it? Anyway, we'll get on to the stories. Right, Nod and Sonia's involved in this, all that while ago, about 2003 or 4. So I said I'd take him for a trip, and I took Nod. I think this is the first trip. Well, it was winter time, and it was cold. It was freezing. Well, it didn't bother me because I've made a stove. I made a stove out of a gas bottle, and the chap at Bardney Lock got pine offcuts, and he had so much I could take as much as I wanted, so I had free fuel for it. The only thing is, you did have to, you know, keep at it. It was like burning kindling. But 10 minutes after you lit it, you had a lovely warm boat. It was fine. Anyway, the first time I went, we set off, and there was a little bit of thin ice around the boat, but that didn't worry me. Well, actually it did, but that's later. Anyway, what happened was, I backed out, and I found it didn't steer very well. Well, what had happened was, about a mile stretch of water up to the sluice was still water, and it was quite thick ice. So as I backed out, it broke half the wooden rudder off. I ended up making a steel one. So I had some steering. Anyway, we set off through the ice, and it didn't float at all. I wasn't worried. Had a bar on the front, no problem. Anyway, we'd gone about a mile, and Nod said, "Oh, there's water coming in, we're sinking." I looked down, sure enough we were, and I said, is the bilge pump working? And he checked and it was. Anyway, luckily we were near a newish then jetty. So I went to that thinking I'd tie my ropes on. Well, by the time we got there, it stopped coming in. When I stopped, and on inspection, I found out it's a clinker-built boat, by the way, mahogany clinker-built boat. The ice had worn the bottom edges of the planks, so there was a gap. So when you were going along quite fast, there was a lot of water coming in. Anyway, we waited for the bilge pump to empty the boat, and I went back very slowly, and we made it back safely. Oh, by the way, I also carried some black bitumen with fine sawdust, and it made a very good filler. And so we put some of that with a bit of wood on the inside over this, it was a knot hole that come out the wood, letting most of the water in. Anyway, I came back slowly and we made it back okay, and I actually filled the lower planks with this filler, and you know, it was like that until I sold it several years later. So it worked a treat. Anyway, that was the first adventure. Now the second one, Nod and Sonia was with me. And I thought, well, I'll build the stove up. You know, it's cold day again. I thought, so we lit the fire and got it going well, and I thought I had some logs that I'd cut. I thought I'll put those on, you know, because it's cold day and it'll keep us warm. Well, what happened was the blooming stove started smoking, but for some reason it had a blowback. So instead of the smoke going out the chimney, the air came down the chimney and the smoke went in the boat and it was choking us. So I said to Nod, open it up. Well, I'd made a flap, an air flap at the bottom, and I had a piece of rod welded onto the gas cylinder and a piece of tube on top of the flap. Well, he pushed it, and he pushed it too hard and the flap come off. And the smoke was filling the boat, it was choking us. Suddenly, remember this smoke is from this wood, is a gas. Well, it suddenly burst into flames. And there was like a blowtorch going into the boat. And I said to Nod, well, I yelled at him, I said, shut it down! He said, you no need to shout. I said, I have. Anyway, he found a piece of wood and put over the hole, and he saved it. So now we say, well, the first time we took him for a trip, we nearly sunk, and the second time we nearly blew up. So there's some boating tales for you. So that's what I mean when I say that boating, you know, is hours of tranquility interspersed by moments of sheer terror, because it is. But we had a lot of fun, and I went a long, long way on it, and I had that boat for 5 years. So, there we are. A quick tale for you. Well, probably not so quick, but I hope you've enjoyed it, and more soon.